You do not necessarily need to push harder to prove anything right now. Staying engaged, staying consistent, and trusting the work you're already doing is probably the right move here. Are you ready to get back to what you love after knee replacement? The Total Knee Success Podcast is your trusted guide with practical tips, evidence-based strategies, and no fluff. It's not personal medical advice, just solid education to help you manage pain, regain mobility, and get back to living the life you love. Let's dive in. Welcome back to the Total Knee Success Podcast. I'm Michelle. After knee replacement, slower progress can be one of the more uncomfortable phases to move through. Even when you know it's common, when improvement isn't clear from week to week, it's easy to start second-guessing your approach and wondering how to stay engaged without turning every day into a test of whether you're doing enough. In episode 45, we talked about why this slowdown is often part of the process rather than a setback. And today we're building on that conversation. By the end of this episode, you'll have a clear framework for how to keep moving forward when improvement feels slower and how to stay engaged without chasing perfection. Progress rarely stops all at once. More often, it just changes how it shows up. Long-term research following people for months after knee replacement shows this pattern clearly, with faster early gains followed by slower improvements that still continue over time. The visible wins that showed up early begin to space out a little bit. Feedback becomes less obvious, and the work you're doing no longer comes with immediate confirmation. If you want a deeper explanation of why this slowdown happens, episode 45 walks through that in more detail and pairs well with what we're talking about today. This episode is about that middle stretch, where progress is still happening, but it no longer announces itself week to week. One of the challenges here is that the signals people rely on early in the process become a bit less useful. Pain levels, swelling, and simple range of motion milestones often stabilize. When those numbers stop changing, it's easy to assume that progress has stopped too. But those early signals were never designed to measure strength, endurance, or coordination. They measure settling. What comes next is building, and building takes longer to show. This is also the point where expectations often change. As pain decreases, it's easy to assume your capacity should automatically increase at the same pace. When the body doesn't meet that expectation, frustration can creep in. As pain improves, it's easy to think your knee should be ready for a lot more. When it isn't, that's often the moment people start pushing too hard or backing off entirely. Neither extreme tends to work well. Large care guideline studies following thousands of people after total knee replacement show that consistency over time is far more closely associated with functional improvement than bursts of intensity or cycles of overdoing it and stopping. Consistency matters most, but only when the work itself is still appropriately challenging and continues to progress over time. People who continue making progress months down the line are usually the ones who keep showing up consistently, even when improvement isn't as obvious. That's the balance we're going to focus on here: how to stay engaged, how to interpret slower feedback, and how to keep moving forward without turning this stretch into a constant test of whether you're doing enough. At this point, it's important to pause and let you know that everyone's recovery looks a little different. Your age, your health history, how your knee moved before surgery, and how your early recovery unfolded all influence what will help you most in this middle phase. There is no single checklist you need to complete to be doing recovery the right way. What follows are examples of activities that research consistently shows can support progress between about 3 to 6 months after surgery. Think of them as options, not requirements. One of the most impactful ways people continue to improve during this phase is through progressive strength work for the muscles that support the knee and hip. Early on, strength gains can happen quickly, but later they require a bit more patience and attention. This is where gradually increasing resistance, not just repetitions, helps rebuild capacity for daily tasks like standing up from a chair or climbing stairs. Closely tied to that is practicing the exact movements you want to get better at. Sit-to-stand work, step-ups, and stair practice, as long as you can safely do it, may not feel exciting, but they directly train the tasks that often still feel challenging at this stage. Repeating these movements in a controlled, thoughtful way helps turn strength into usable function. Walking continues to play a central role, but how you approach it often changes. Instead of focusing on how your knee feels on any single walk, many people benefit from setting simple, repeatable walking goals based on time or steps. The goal here isn't to test yourself every day, but to build a steady rhythm that adds up over weeks. As walking becomes easier, overall endurance can become the next limiter. Low-impact aerobic activities like cycling, gentle incline walking, or pool-based exercise can support cardiovascular fitness without asking the knee to tolerate constant impact. These activities help you feel less fatigued during daily life, even if your knee itself feels relatively settled. Balance and stability work also become more relevant as activity levels increase. Navigating uneven ground, turning quickly, or moving in crowded spaces places different demands on your knee and the rest of your body. Practicing balance in safe, progressive ways supports confidence and reduces hesitation during real-world movement. Some people benefit from paying attention not just to how far they walk, but how they walk. Short periods of gait practice, like walking a bit faster for brief intervals, or paying attention to even steps, can help turn strength and endurance into easier movement. If quadricep strength still feels like a limiting factor despite consistent effort, certain tools can sometimes help. Neuromuscular electrical stimulation is one example, but it's not right for everyone, and it's something that should be discussed with your physical therapist before considering. When used in the right context and with appropriate guidance, it may support muscle activation when strength gains are lagging. If this is an area you're curious about, you can also find additional resources about neuromuscular electrical stimulation linked in the show notes. During this phase, physical therapy often shifts from frequent visits to more targeted check-ins. Occasional sessions focused on progressing load, adjusting exercises, or addressing sticking points can help maintain momentum without turning rehab into a full-time job. For some people, especially those balancing travel, work, or caregiving responsibilities, remote or telehealth-based guidance can provide structure and accountability. When used thoughtfully, this kind of support can help people stay consistent without overextending themselves. Finally, the way you organize your routine plays a larger role than many people realize. Simple tracking, realistic goals, and knowing what your baseline effort looks like can reduce the urge to either push too hard or disengage entirely when progress feels slower. The common thread across all of these options is not intensity or perfection, it's consistency. The activities that tend to support continued improvement are the ones you can return to week after week, even when the feedback is harder to notice. And this is where your physical therapist becomes especially valuable. They help you sort through which of these areas deserves the most attention right now, which ones can wait, and how to scale your effort so it supports progress instead of undermining it. Rather than guessing whether you should do more, do less, or do something different, this phase works best when decisions are made with context. Your therapist brings that perspective, grounded in your history, your exam findings, and your goals, so you're better equipped to make thoughtful, confident choices about how to move forward. And that's exactly the role education plays here, giving a clearer lens, not directives. This podcast is educational. It's designed to help you understand common patterns and principles after knee replacement, not to replace individualized medical advice. Decisions about your care, your activity level, and your progression should always be made in partnership with your own healthcare providers. If you're preparing for knee replacement and want a clear, grounded way to build on what you're learning here and use the weeks before surgery to set yourself up for a smoother recovery, my upcoming book, The Total Knee Replacement Game Plan, walks you through exactly how to do that. It's educational in nature and meant to complement your learning and not replace the guidance of your healthcare team. We discuss how to go into surgery informed, not overwhelmed. You can click on the link in the show notes and get notified when the book is released. In the next episode, episode 47, What Prehab Actually Changes and What It Doesn't, we revisit prehab with fresh eyes. We'll talk about what preparation truly improves and what it was never meant to eliminate, and how to think about later slowdowns without turning them into self-blame. Subscribe so you don't miss it when it drops. But before we wrap up, I want to leave you with this. You do not necessarily need to push harder to prove anything right now. Staying engaged, staying consistent, and trusting the work you're already doing is probably the right move here. And if you're listening to this episode, that's exactly what you're doing. That's worth recognizing. This is how strong outcomes are built. Thanks for joining me today. I'm Michelle, and this has been the Total Knee Success Podcast. This podcast is for educational purposes only. Discover more at totalkneesuccess.com and be sure to subscribe and share because every step forward takes you closer to living the life you love.